The alarms blared through the sterile corridors of Alpha 9, the galaxy's most secure prison. Anthony Stark's heart raced as he sprinted down the hallway, his muscular frame barely contained by the prison jumpsuit. He had waited years for this moment, meticulously planning every detail of his escape. "Stop right there, Stark!" a guard shouted, his laser rifle aimed squarely at Anthony's back. Anthony smirked, not breaking his stride. "Sorry, pal. I've got a date with freedom." With practiced ease, he vaulted over a security barrier, his enhanced reflexes, a remnant from his days as an elite space marine, giving him an edge. The guard's shot went wide, scorching the wall where Anthony's head had been a split second earlier. As he rounded the corner, Anthony spotted his target, the emergency escape pods. He'd disabled the lockdown protocols days ago, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, with chaos erupting around him, that moment had arrived. Anthony slammed his palm on the pod's activation panel. The door hissed open, and he dove inside just as another volley of laser fire erupted behind him. The pod sealed shut, and Anthony punched in the launch sequence. "So long, suckers," he muttered, a grin spreading across his face as the pod rocketed away from Alpha 9. His victory was short-lived. Alarms blared inside the tiny craft, warning of a critical system failure. Anthony's eyes widened as he realized the guards had managed to damage the pod during his escape. The navigation system was fried, and he was hurtling through space with no way to control his trajectory. "Well, shit!" Anthony growled, strapping himself in as the pod began to shake violently. He gritted his teeth as the craft entered the atmosphere of an unknown planet, flames licking at the view screen. The last thing he saw before impact was a blur of lush, green vegetation. Anthony groaned, his head pounding as he regained consciousness. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. The escape pod lay in ruins around him, smoke billowing from its twisted frame. Somehow, he'd survived the crash. As his vision cleared, Anthony found himself staring into a pair of the most captivating eyes he'd ever seen. They were a mesmerizing shade of emerald set in a face of impossible beauty. And that face was green? "Are you an angel?" Anthony mumbled, still dazed from the impact. A melodious laugh filled the air. "I don't know what an angel is, but I can assure you I'm very real." Anthony shook his head, clearing the fog from his mind. He focused on the figure before him, a woman, her skin a vibrant shade of green with curves that would make a goddess jealous. She wore clothing that seemed to be made from some kind of iridescent leaves, hugging her form in all the right places. "I'm Roxy," the green-skinned beauty said, helping Anthony to his feet. "And you're the first human I've ever seen in person. What's your name, stranger?" Anthony flashed his most charming smile, ignoring the ache in his ribs. "Anthony Stark, at your service. And might I say, I've always thought green was my favorite color. Now, I'm absolutely certain." Roxy's cheeks darkened to a deeper shade of green. Was she blushing? "Oh, are you always this direct?" "Only when I meet beautiful women on strange planets after narrowly escaping death," Anthony quipped, wincing as he tried to take a step. "Speaking of which, where exactly am I?" "You're on Zen 3, Roxy explained, supporting Anthony's weight as they moved away from the crash site. "It's not often we get visitors, especially ones that fall from the sky. Are you in trouble?" Anthony chuckled, though it turned into a grimace of pain. What gave it away? The dramatic crash landing or the dashing good looks? Roxy giggled, the sound like music to Anthony's ears. "Both, actually. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe. You can tell me all about your troubles and about Earth. I've always been curious about your planet." As they made their way through the lush, alien landscape, Anthony couldn't help but marvel at his luck. Sure, he was a fugitive on an unknown world, but he had a gorgeous guide who seemed genuinely interested in him. Things could be worse. "So, Roxy," Anthony said, his natural charm kicking in despite his injuries, "do you often take in stranded space criminals, or am I just special?" Roxy raised an eyebrow, her green lips quirking into a smile. "Space criminal? That sounds exciting. And dangerous." "I prefer misunderstood hero," Anthony replied with a wink. "But I promise, I'm only a danger to those who deserve it, and to my own health, apparently." They arrived at what appeared to be a dwelling carved into an enormous bioluminescent tree. The entire structure pulsed with a soft, otherworldly glow. "Welcome to my home," Roxy said, helping Anthony inside. "It's not much, but it's safe, and it has a great view of the triple moons." Anthony whistled appreciatively as he took in the organic, flowing architecture. "It's beautiful, just like its owner." Roxy's blush deepened again. "You really are direct, aren't you? Is this how humans usually interact?" "Only the charming ones," Anthony said with a grin. He settled onto what appeared to be a living chair, marveling at how it conformed to his body. "So, what do you want to know about Earth?" Roxy's eyes lit up with excitement. "Everything, but especially, how do humans court each other? What are your mating rituals like?" Anthony nearly choked on air. "Well, that's certainly jumping right into the deep end. Typically we start with something called a date. Usually dinner by candlelight, maybe some dancing." "That sounds romantic," Roxy said, leaning in closer. "And then what happens?" Anthony felt his pulse quicken at her proximity. He could smell something like exotic flowers and sweet fruit. "Well, that depends on how well the date goes. Sometimes there's a goodnight kiss. Sometimes more." Roxy's eyes widened. "More? Like what?" "Let's just say it involves a lot of hands-on biology lessons," Anthony said with a mischievous grin. Roxy clapped her hands together, her whole face lighting up. "Oh, I love biology. Perhaps you could teach me sometime." Anthony couldn't believe his luck. Here he was, a fugitive on an alien world, being propositioned by the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen, green skin and all. "I'd be more than happy to give you a thorough education," he said, his voice low and husky. "But first, I should probably explain why I crash-landed on your planet. It's a bit of a long story." Roxy settled in beside him, her body radiating an intoxicating warmth. "I've got all the time in the world, Anthony, and I'm a very attentive student." As Anthony began to recount the tale of his wrongful imprisonment and daring escape, he couldn't help but feel that his luck was finally changing. Sure, he was still a wanted man, stranded on an alien world. But with Roxy by his side, suddenly the future looked a whole lot brighter and greener. "So there I was," Anthony said, gesturing dramatically, "surrounded by guards with only my wits and devastatingly good looks to save me." Roxy listened, enraptured, as Anthony spun his tale. And as the alien sun set outside, casting the room in a soft, ethereal glow, Anthony realized that maybe, just maybe, crashing on Zen 3 was the best thing that had ever happened to him. As the first rays of Zen 3's triple suns peeked through the bioluminescent leaves of Roxy's tree home, Anthony stirred from his makeshift bed. He winced, his body still aching from the crash, but a smile played on his lips as he remembered where he was and who he was with. "Good morning, space criminal," Roxy's melodious voice called out. She appeared in the doorway, holding what looked like a pulsating purple fruit. "I brought you breakfast. It's a gorbel fruit, very good for healing." Anthony sat up, eyeing the fruit warily. Thanks, beautiful, but I'm not sure my Earth stomach is ready for alien cuisine just yet. Roxy's face fell. Oh, I didn't even think of that. I'm sorry, Hey, don't worry, Anthony interrupted, flashing his most charming smile. He took the fruit and bit into it, surprised by its pleasant, tangy flavor. Delicious. Almost as sweet as you. Roxy's cheeks darkened to a deep emerald. You really are incorrigible, aren't you? Part of my charm, Anthony replied with a wink. As he ate, his mind raced. He needed to start investigating the conspiracy that had landed him in Alpha 9, but he also couldn't deny his growing attraction to Roxy. So, any chance you could give me a tour of your world might help me figure out my next move. Roxy's eyes lit up. I'd love to, but first, you promised to tell me more about Earth customs, especially. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. Mating rituals. Anthony nearly choked on his gorble fruit. Right, that. Well, on Earth, we usually start with something called dating. Two people who are interested in each other go out and do activities together. Like what? Roxy asked, her curiosity evident. Oh, dinner, movies, long walks on the beach, Anthony said, his mind racing for ideas that might translate to an alien world. Say, do you have beaches here on Zen 3? Roxy nodded enthusiastically. We have crystal shores. The sand changes color with the tides. I could take you there. Sounds perfect, Anthony said, standing up and stretching. Lead the way, gorgeous. As they made their way through the lush, alien landscape, Anthony couldn't help but marvel at the beauty around him, both the planets and his guides. Roxy pointed out various plants and creatures, her excitement infectious. And that's a shimmerfly, she said, indicating a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a jellyfish. They're bioluminescent and absolutely gorgeous, Anthony finished, his eyes locked on Roxy rather than the creature, just like everything else on this planet. Roxy blushed again, but her eyes sparkled with mischief. On Zen 3, such blatant flirtation is considered a prelude to mating. Anthony raised an eyebrow, a grin spreading across his face. Is that so? And what would the next step be? Well, Roxy said, stepping closer, typically the interested parties would engage in a ritual dance to demonstrate their physical compatibility. Dance, huh? Anthony chuckled. I might be a bit rusty, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Roxy's face lit up. Really? Oh, this will be so much fun. Before Anthony could react, Roxy had taken his hands and begun to move in a complex series of steps. Her body undulated in ways that defied human anatomy, her green skin shimmering in the alien sunlight. Anthony tried to follow along, but his movements were clumsy in comparison. He stumbled, nearly falling, but Roxy caught him with surprising strength. Sorry, he said, breathless. I guess I'm not cut out for alien dancing. Roxy laughed, the sound like tinkling bells. That's okay. It's cute watching you try. Now tell me more about how humans show interest in each other. As they continued their walk, Anthony regaled Roxy with tales of Earth courtship rituals, from cheesy pickup lines to grand romantic gestures. Roxy listened with rapt attention, occasionally asking questions that made Anthony blush. So, this kissing, Roxy said, her brow furrowed in confusion. You press your mouths together? That doesn't sound very hygienic. Anthony laughed. Trust me, when it's with the right person, hygiene is the last thing on your mind. They arrived at the crystal shores Roxy had mentioned. The sand indeed shifted colors, from deep purple to shimmering gold as the waves lapped at the shore. Anthony whistled in appreciation. "Now this," he said, "would make for one hell of a first date." Roxy tilted her head. "Date? Oh, you mean one of those courtship activities you mentioned?" "Exactly," Anthony said, an idea forming. "In fact, why don't we consider this our first date? I'll show you how we do things on Earth." Roxy's eyes widened with excitement. "Oh, yes, please." Anthony spent the next few hours giving Roxy a crash course in Earth-style romance. They walked along the shore, hand in hand. He showed her how to skip stones across the iridescent water. As the suns began to set, painting the sky in a riot of colors, Anthony pulled Roxy close. "And this," he said softly, "is how we end a perfect first date on Earth." He leaned in slowly, giving Roxy time to pull away if she wanted, but she didn't. Their lips met, and Anthony felt a jolt of electricity run through him. Roxy's lips were softer than he'd imagined, with a slight taste of exotic fruit. When they finally parted, Roxy's eyes were wide with wonder. "Oh my," she breathed. "I think I like Earth customs." Anthony grinned. "Just wait until you learn about second dates." As they made their way back to Roxy's home, Anthony's mind returned to the conspiracy that had landed him in Alpha 9. He needed to start investigating, but he was reluctant to involve Roxy in anything dangerous. "Hey, Roxy," he said casually, "you wouldn't happen to have any way of accessing galactic news networks, would you? I need to check on something." Roxy nodded. "Of course. We have a communal info hub in the village center. I can take you there tomorrow." Anthony felt a surge of hope. Maybe he could finally start piecing together who had framed him and why. The next day, as they made their way to the info hub, Anthony couldn't help but notice the looks they were getting from other Zen 3 inhabitants. Some seemed curious, others wary. "Don't mind them," Roxy said, noticing his discomfort. "We don't get many off-worlders here. They're just not used to seeing someone so pink." Anthony chuckled. "And here I thought my dashing good looks were causing a stir." At the info hub, Anthony quickly got to work, searching for any news related to his case or the corrupt officials he suspected were behind his framing. Roxy watched in fascination as his fingers flew across the alien interface. "You're really good at that," she remarked. "Part of my charm," Anthony replied absently, his focus on the screen. Suddenly, his eyes widened. "Holy shit!" "What is it?" Roxy asked, leaning in. Anthony pointed to a news article. It's about a high-ranking official in the Galactic Security Council. He's been accused of corruption and ties to interstellar crime syndicates. This could be the break I need." As Anthony delved deeper into the article, piecing together connections, he failed to notice the commotion outside the info hub. It wasn't until Roxy tugged urgently on his arm that he looked up. "Anthony," she said, her voice tight with fear, "I think we have a problem." Anthony followed her gaze to the window. His heart sank. Outside, a group of heavily armed individuals in sleek, black armor were approaching the info hub. They looked nothing like the local law enforcement. "Bounty hunters," Anthony growled. "Looks like my past has caught up with me." Roxy's eyes widened in fear. "What do we do?" Anthony's mind raced. He was so close to uncovering the truth, but now his presence was putting Roxy and her entire village in danger. He made a split-second decision. "We run," he said, grabbing Roxy's hand. "I'm sorry, but I need to get out of here. I can't put you or your people in danger." As they slipped out the back of the info hub, Anthony's heart pounded. He had found a crucial piece of evidence, but at what cost? And how could he protect Roxy while continuing his investigation? The chase was on, and Anthony knew that the next few hours would determine not just his fate, but possibly the fate of the entire galaxy. And somewhere in the back of his mind, A small voice wondered if he'd ever get that second date with Roxy. Anthony's heart raced as he and Roxy darted through the winding streets of the Zen 3 village. The sound of heavy boots and barked orders echoed behind them, growing closer with each passing moment. "This way," Roxy hissed, pulling Anthony into a narrow alley. They pressed themselves against the bioluminescent walls, holding their breath as a group of bounty hunters thundered past. "That was close," Anthony whispered, his eyes locked on Roxy's face. Even in the dim light, her green skin seemed to glow with an otherworldly beauty. "I'm sorry I got you into this mess." Roxy's lips curved into a mischievous smile. "Are you kidding? This is the most excitement I've had in years. Besides," she added, her voice dropping to a husky whisper, "danger can be quite stimulating." Anthony felt his pulse quicken, and not just from the adrenaline of the chase. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" "You have no idea," Roxy replied with a wink. She peered out of the alley, her eyes scanning the street. "I think the coast is clear. We should make for the Crystal Caves. They'll provide cover and might throw off any tracking devices." As they sprinted towards the outskirts of the village, Anthony's mind raced. He needed to find a way to clear his name and expose the corruption in the Galactic Security Council. But first, they had to lose their pursuers. The crystal caves loomed before them, their faceted surfaces refracting the alien sunlight in a dazzling display. As they entered the labyrinthine caverns, Anthony marveled at the beauty surrounding them. "It's incredible," he breathed, his voice echoing off the crystalline walls. Roxy beamed with pride. "It's one of Zen 3's natural wonders. The crystals also have some unique properties." Before Anthony could ask what she meant, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the caves. Roxy's eyes widened in alarm. "They're coming! We need to hide!" Anthony looked around frantically, but there was nowhere to conceal themselves in the open cavern. "There's no cover. We're sitting ducks." A sly smile spread across Roxy's face. "Not necessarily. Remember when I said the crystals had unique properties? Watch this." To Anthony's amazement, Roxy's skin began to shimmer and change color, perfectly matching the crystalline walls behind her. Within seconds, she had all but disappeared, only the faintest outline visible if you knew exactly where to look. "Holy shit," Anthony breathed. "You can camouflage?" Roxy's disembodied voice came from seemingly nowhere. "All Zen 3 natives can. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Now hold still." Anthony felt a tingling sensation spread across his skin. He looked down to see his own body taking on the appearance of the surrounding crystals. "I can change your color too," Roxy explained. "But you need to stay absolutely still. Any movement will disrupt the effect." They froze in place just as a group of bounty hunters entered the cavern. Anthony held his breath, watching as the armed men swept the area with high-tech scanning devices. "No sign of them," one of the hunters growled. "These damn crystals are interfering with our equipment." "Keep searching," another ordered. "They can't have gone far." As the hunters moved deeper into the caves, Anthony let out a sigh of relief. "That was incredible," he whispered. "You're amazing, Roxy." He felt a warm hand slip into his. "You're not so bad yourself for a space criminal," Roxy teased. "Now, let's get out of here while we can." As they made their way out of the caves, Anthony's mind returned to the conspiracy. "I need to find a way to transmit the information I found to the right authorities," he mused. "But I can't risk using any official channels. They're probably all compromised." Roxy's face lit up. "I might have an idea. There's an old communications array on the far side of the planet. It's been abandoned for years, but if we can get it working, we might be able to send a secure, untraceable message." Anthony grinned. "Roxy, You're a genius. Lead the way." Their journey to the communications array was fraught with close calls and narrow escapes. Along the way, Anthony filled Roxy in on the details of the conspiracy he'd uncovered. "So, this Galactic Security Council member, Darius Vex, he's been working with interstellar crime syndicates?" Roxy asked as they trekked through a dense, alien forest. Anthony nodded grimly. "Exactly. He's been taking bribes to look the other way on major smuggling operations. When I stumbled onto evidence of his corruption, he framed me to keep me quiet." Roxy's eyes narrowed. "That's terrible. We have to expose him." "That's the plan," Anthony replied. "If we can get this message out, it should trigger a full investigation. But we need to be careful. Vex has a lot of powerful friends." As if on cue, the sound of engines roared overhead. A sleek black ship descended through the canopy, kicking up a whirlwind of debris. "Looks like Vex sent his personal goon squad," Anthony growled. "Run!" They sprinted through the underbrush, dodging energy blasts that scorched the alien flora around them. Anthony's military training kicked in as he weaved and ducked, pulling Roxy along with him. "The array is just ahead," Roxy shouted over the chaos. "We're almost there." They burst into a clearing, the massive, dilapidated communications array looming before them. Anthony's heart soared at the sight, but his elation was short-lived. A dozen armed mercenaries stood between them and their goal, weapons trained on the pair. "End of the line, Stark," a gruff voice called out. A tall, scarred man stepped forward, a cruel smile twisting his features. "Vex sends his regards." Anthony's mind raced, searching for a way out. He glanced at Roxy, desperation in his eyes. To his surprise, she looked calm, even confident. "Trust me," Roxy whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'll handle this." Before Anthony could respond, Roxy stepped forward, her hips swaying seductively. She batted her eyelashes at the mercenaries, her voice a sultry purr. "Boys, boys, there's no need for violence. How about we talk this out like civilized beings?" The scarred leader scoffed, but Anthony noticed several of his men lowering their weapons slightly, entranced by Roxy's exotic beauty. "What's there to talk about, green girl?" the leader growled. Roxy's lips curved into a coy smile. "Oh, I'm sure we can find something interesting to discuss. In fact, I'd love to show you a special Zen 3 greeting. It's quite intimate." She sauntered towards the group, her green skin shimmering in the alien sunlight. Anthony watched, tense and confused, as Roxy reached the mercenaries. Suddenly, Roxy exhaled sharply, releasing a cloud of shimmering, iridescent pollen. The mercenaries stumbled back, coughing and sputtering as the spores took effect. Within seconds, they were swaying on their feet, eyes glazed over. "Holy shit," Anthony breathed, staring at Roxy in awe as she jogged back to him. "What did you just do?" Roxy winked, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Hypnotic pollen, one of Zen 3's natural defenses. I told you I was full of surprises." Anthony shook his head, grinning despite the danger. "Remind me never to get on your bad side. Now what?" "Now," Roxy said, grabbing his hand. "We run. The effect won't last long." They raced towards the communications array, leaving the dazed mercenaries behind them. As they ran, Anthony couldn't help but marvel at the incredible woman by his side, wondering what other surprises she might have in store. "Almost there," he muttered, sweat beading on his brow. "Just a few more seconds." A blast of energy scorched the console inches from Anthony's hand. He whirled to see Darius Vex himself standing at the edge of the clearing, flanked by a new group of mercenaries. "I must admit, I'm impressed, Stark," Vex drawled, his aristocratic features twisted in a sneer. You've led us on quite a chase, but it ends here." Anthony stepped in front of Roxy, shielding her with his body. "It's over, Vex. The message is sent. Your corruption will be exposed." Vex laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You fool! Do you really think your little evidence will make a difference? I have half the council in my pocket. This changes nothing." "Maybe not," a new voice rang out. Anthony turned to see dozens of Zen 3 natives emerging from the forest, led by the village elders. But perhaps testimony from an entire planet might carry some weight. Vex's face paled as he realized he was surrounded. The mercenaries, outnumbered and outmatched by the Zen 3 natives' natural abilities, quickly surrendered. In the aftermath, as galactic peacekeepers arrived to take Vex into custody, Anthony found himself alone with Roxy at the edge of the clearing. "So," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice, "I guess this is it. My name's cleared. The bad guys are caught. Happy ending, right?" Roxy stepped closer, her green eyes sparkling with mischief and something deeper. "Not quite," she murmured. "I believe you still owe me that second date." "And," she added, her voice dropping to a sultry whisper, "I'm still very interested in those practical lessons in Earth biology you promised." Anthony felt his heart race as he pulled Roxy close. "Well, far be it from me to disappoint such an eager student," he said with a grin. As their lips met in a passionate kiss, the sun setting behind them in a riot of alien colors, Anthony knew that his greatest adventure was just beginning. The end. Or perhaps just the beginning of a whole new journey for Anthony and Roxy. And there you have it, folks, the tale of Anthony Stark and Roxy, proving once again that love can bloom even when you're on the run from corrupt space politicians. Remember, in case of emergency, always carry a towel and know where your green-skinned alien girlfriend is. If you enjoyed this intergalactic romance, why not check out our other stories? Coming soon, Wookiee Nights, a Kashyyyk love story, and the Klingon's Guide to Interspecies Dating. Remember, in space, everyone can hear you flirt, especially if you're Captain Kirk. May the Force be with you, live long and prosper, and always know where your towel is.